Okay, spoiler alert for Dynamite's Red Sonja, the one written by Gail Simone, 3 volumes in her entire 18-issue run. Now, I only just started reading Sword and Sorcery comics at the time of writing, starting with Marvel's new Conan the Barbarian, the same one written by Jason Aaron. In that series, Jason Aaron makes a strong starting point for an age-old character with a mixed history in terms of quality and appropriateness. Aaron expertly captures the violence, mysticism, and gore that goes along with Sword and Sorcery comics, especially ones about blood, sex, and war, and he does it with a sense of nuance that brings Conan into a modern age. Now, what does it have to do with Gail Simone's run on Red Sonja? Well, besides from the shared lineage between the two characters, I believe they have the same creator. I bring up everything that Aaron is doing great with Conan because Gail Simone did it first with Red Sonja, and I think she did it better. Another reason is because Marvel's new Conan comic is one of 2 reasons I started reading Red Sonja. Conan is a great character when written by Aaron. I've never read a Conan run written by anyone else, but it doesn't matter how great he's written, his design is still the same as always, and so is his backstory, which is kind of boring to me. Conan has a pretty generic design. Sometimes he looks like just some panels of Thor with brown hair, specifically from when Jason Aaron also wrote that character. He's a big, muscly white guy without a signature weapon, armor set, or even markings or tattoos. Good character designs don't need any of that stuff to be good, but there needs to be something of the like to look different from everyone else. So to vary my experience with the sword and sorcery genre, I looked at other series. I came across the character Red Sonja, and when I was vaguely familiar with the she devil with the sword, I didn't really want to touch that chainmail bikini. It's silly in a bad way, and now I realize that it does a massive disservice to this amazing character by objectifying her so blatantly on the cover. I said before that there was a second reason I started reading Red Sonja, and it was because of how often I found Gail Simone's run on recommended lists for fantasy comics and in sword and sorcery genre store. I found Gail Simone's run on recommended lists for fantasy comics and sword and sorcery stories in general. From IGN, CBR, and When Writing About Comics, I heard how Gail Simone, a prolific writer in the comic industry already, had changed what many people viewed as a gross male fantasy into a dark, badass fantasy story about a woman so deadly and vicious people call her the devil. I also knew based on Simone's prior work that her Red Sonja would probably be more tasteful than previous versions. I personally believe we don't need another female badass heroine whose motivating backstory starts with her getting raped. That being said, I've only read Simone's Red Sonja. Everything else is only what I've heard, but past storylines for the character don't have as good a reputation as Simone's, and I have assumed that that's for a good reason. So I picked up the first volume of Dynamite's Red Sonja, written by Gail Simone, as I'm going to say repeatedly throughout this whole video. And I'm greeted to a character with an interesting and challenging view of the world. Not Red Sonja, but King Demoth. In fantasy, sci-fi, and even the modern world, rulers suck. Kings, emperors, presidents, politicians, they don't exactly embody the kind of people we can trust. They aren't fair, merciful, or just. Most often quite the opposite. King Demoth defeats the Zamorian king, clothed in blood and guts and a scar over his eye. I think I have the villain pegged. Instead, when he finds 2 barbarian animals chained in the cellars of the cruel Zamorian king, God, I hope I'm saying that right, he doesn't execute them. He frees them, clothes them, and feeds them. The king demonstrated an unexpected kind of human decency from a political leader. In his mind and his words, we fought for our freedom today. It would be unjust, indeed, to deny that to whoever these creatures used to be. As I'm sure you can guess, one of those creatures is Red Sonja. And for the first time, Red Sonja meets a ruler she can respect and be called upon to fight for. While King Demoth doesn't stay in Simone's story very long, the effect he had on Red Sonja lives throughout the first 2 volumes of Simone's run. The she-devil with the sword hates kings for being a cowardly, cruel, and selfish lot. The Zamorian king kidnaps and enslaves the wives of fallen enemies and forces captured warriors to fight each other for sport. A dying emperor in Volume 2 will take all his slaves to the grave if he does not receive 6 great artisans for his send-off to death. Red Sonja has every reason to hate kings, because none of them have lived up to the rather small kindness that King Demoth showed her. Simone skillfully portrays how people feel about their leaders through Red Sonja's own feelings. Red Sonja is distrustful, angry, and disenfranchised with the sense of importance these leaders hold for themselves. She decided that they should be proving their worth to her, with every hateful glance and dismissive gaze she gives them. It's a feeling that most people can relate to today, when in America we fully expect our leaders and representatives to vote down any bill that would suit the majority of people, and not the corporations that fill their pockets. I feel that Simone simplifies these modern issues into a sword and sorcery blend, making it both relatable and entertaining. I found that when a prince tried to prove his intelligence by curing people he poisoned, he claimed no guilt with the same arrogance of a governor who calls for relief for a natural disaster he failed to prepare for in the first place. This is a connection I made myself based off of personal experience that others probably won't have. But that's the powerful thing about fantasy. You get to make your own connections. Now, for the character Red Sonja herself, I think Simone's characterization is amazing, holding both depth and creativity in form. Sure, I can go on about how funny it is to see her just disarm men, both literally and figuratively, with her words and then her sword. But I think Simone makes Red Sonja's wants seem simple and her love for ale and desire for sex now and then, making her seem truly human. Then, at some point, this badass heroine, when she's hunting through the woods, coming upon a beautiful stag, instead of just slaughtering it, she reflects on the family she once had and who she once was. Again, later, when she's saving an artisan of pleasure, Red Sonja learns of the beauty she could see in herself if she had the chance to be a lady instead of a barbarian. She's both relatable and godlike in her characterization. She's unmatched with the blade, but on the inside she's not altogether. She isn't whole, and when she comes close to finding a home, like with the 6 artisans she gathered, she runs away. Red Sonja runs away from the artisans, knowing that to stay with them any longer is to never leave. How Simone writes her inner monologue creates a sense not that Red Sonja thinks the home would be bad for her, but it wouldn't be where she fits in, and it adds an incredibly deep layer to the she-devil with the sword. Now, in terms of character design, like physical depiction of the character, Simone's Red Sonja is a mixed bag. Design has always been a negative factor for me, personally, with Aaron's run on Conan, and I was looking for a story that improves on it. Now, Walter Giovanni's art is spectacular, but some of the character designs leave something to be desired for me. Red Sonja's chainmail bikini is here, and it's not going anywhere. But her bikini is traded in for armor and leathers in instances where sense necessitates it. When Red Sonja is in the snow, covered in pelts with black paint over her eyes, she is the she-devil. Sorry, let me rephrase that. When Red Sonja is in the snow, covered in pelts with black war paint over her eyes, never is the she-devil more menacing. When she fights Red Amnesia, hopefully I said that right, she does so in complete armor, beside of a knight. And in that shot, she is a force to be reckoned with. Even the one-off hunting leathers in her trip to the swamp in Volume 2, or a throwback to her chainmail tunic from before the bikini in the same volume, they all seem more appropriate and appealing than her chainmail bikini. But, and to change my mind about it, there is a chapter having to do with the church that acts as an always timely rebellion of religion's silly vilification of sex. It speaks about how Red Sonja's outfit is an expression of herself, as clothes should be, and also how she feels more naked being covered up. It's a truthful representation to show how detrimental people's judgments can be to women and how they view themselves. It's pretty clear that how Red Sonja dresses is no one's business but her own. That makes me think that maybe, or even likely, my disdain for the chainmail bikini is my and society's problem, and not Red Sonja's. If I'm distracted by it, it's more often than not my hormonal brain's fault, and most certainly not Red Sonja's, as it would not be any woman's. I will never say that the chainmail bikini offers any real physical protection, because it doesn't. But Simone's Red Sonja wears it for mental protection, so it becomes my job to accept it and get over it. Whether or not it affects comic sales or people's perception of Red Sonja, that's not my problem or my business. She's a staple in comics, and she's here to stay dressed however she wants, for however she wants to, or however long she wants to. Because Red Sonja is a classic character in a classic genre, and Gail Simone's run is a classic story in itself.